Let me tell you something I still think about almost every single night. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. And even now, years later, when people ask me what really happened that afternoon near Hyde Park, my throat goes dry before I can even start talking. Because you can watch 100 videos online. You can read 1,000 headlines. But none of that puts you on the pavement where I was standing, close enough to feel the heat, close enough to see a man in a red tunic decide in the space of one heartbeat that he was not going to run. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, slowly, the way it actually happened, not the polished version. It was a Tuesday, late June, one of those London days where the sky can't make up its mind, going from bright gold to gray cloud and back again every 20 minutes. I remember that clearly because I'd checked the weather 3 times that morning and the app kept lying to me. My sister was visiting from up north, and she'd never really done London properly. So I'd promised to walk her around the whole royal stretch, the palace, the parks, the whole tourist circuit that people like me who live here usually roll our eyes at. Her name's Bethany. She's the type who reads every plaque out loud, every single one. Drives me mad, but that day I didn't mind. That day she was just happy, holding her little paper cup of coffee, snapping photos of pigeons like they were rare wildlife. I keep coming back to how ordinary it all was. That's what gets me. There was no warning, no sign, nothing in the air that morning that said today was going to be different from any other day. I'd had toast for breakfast. I'd argued with Bethany about which shoes she should wear for all the walking. She'd wanted to bring an umbrella and I'd told her not to bother. And then of course it had drizzled on us for 10 minutes near Marble Arch and she'd given me a look I'll never live down. Small stuff. The stuff of any normal day out with your sister. We stopped for that coffee at a little cart. She got some sort of caramel thing with cream on top that cost about 6 quid, and she moaned about the price the whole way down the road while drinking every drop of it. I bought a bottle of water. I remember the man at the cart had a radio playing quietly, some phone-in show, a man arguing about football. All so normal it hurts to think about now. We came up along the edge of Hyde Park mid-afternoon. Around 3, maybe a little after. The place was packed, genuinely heaving. It was the kind of afternoon where half of London and every tourist in the country had decided to be outside at the same time. There were families spread out on the grass. Kids chasing a football that kept rolling into strangers' picnics. An ice cream van with a queue so long it curled around itself. Somewhere off to the left, a busker was playing something on a saxophone, a slow, lazy tune that drifted over everything. I remember a woman near us was arguing softly with her husband about whether they had time to see the palace before their train. I remember a group of teenagers taking selfies with a very unimpressed pigeon. I remember the smell, cut grass, hot tarmac, someone's cigarette, the sugary waffle smell from a food stand. Little things, you'd never think they'd stick, but they do. That's the thing about a day that turns bad. Your brain grabs onto every ordinary detail right before everything stops being ordinary. Near the park gate, along the pavement, there was a mounted guard, and a little further down, closer to a ceremonial post that had been set up for something, I never did find out exactly what stood one of the king's guard, on foot, in the full red tunic, the tall bearskin hat, rigid as a statue. You know the ones, the guards that tourists love to test. People wave hands in their faces, make silly noises, try to make them laugh or flinch or crack even the tiniest smile. And they never do. They just stare straight ahead like the rest of the world is a television playing in another room. I'd walked past hundreds of them over the years living here. You stop seeing them honestly. They become part of the furniture of the city like the red buses and the black cabs and the pigeons. You forget there's a real person in there. A person with a heartbeat and a lunch break and someone at home. To most of us, they're just part of the postcard. That's a terrible thing to admit now, knowing what I know. But it's the truth, and I promised you the truth. Bethany, of course, wanted a photo with him. "Come on," she said, tugging my sleeve. "Just one, he won't mind." "They never mind," I said. That's kind of the whole point. So we walked over. There was already a small cluster of tourists around him. A dad hoisting his toddler up for a picture. Two young women giggling as they posed. A man in a bright yellow raincoat which stood out because it wasn't raining, standing a bit off to the side, not really taking photos, just standing. I noticed him and then I unnoticed him the way you do. He wasn't doing anything. He was just there. The guard didn't move. Not for the toddler, not for the giggling women, not for anyone. His eyes were fixed on some point far away that only he could see. His jaw was set. His gloved hands rested on the rifle held upright against his shoulder. I remember thinking, not for the first time, how strange and how impressive it is that a person can train themselves to be that still. To switch off every natural instinct to look at the thing in front of you, to react, to be human in the small twitchy ways we all are. He was breathing. That was about it. Bethany posed. I took the photo. She checked it, decided she looked terrible and made me take another. Standard. And that's when the first strange thing happened. It was a sound, or really the lack of a sound. The saxophone stopped, just cut off mid-note. Not the natural end of a song, you can tell the difference. This was a stop, like the man playing had suddenly forgotten how. I looked over. The busker was standing very still, saxophone hanging from the strap around his neck, staring back toward the far side of the park, toward the road, and a few other people had started to turn too. Not many. Just enough that you noticed a little ripple of heads swinging in one direction, the way a breeze moves through long grass. Bethany didn't notice. She was still fussing with her phone. I put my hand on her arm. "Hang on," I said. I don't even know why I said it. Something just felt off. You know that feeling, right? Before your brain can explain it, your body already knows. The hair on my arms was standing up and I couldn't have told you why. The man in the yellow raincoat had turned too, but he wasn't looking toward the road like everyone else. He was looking back over his shoulder toward the crowd, toward us, and there was something on his face I didn't like. I couldn't name it then. Later I understood it. He was checking, counting, watching how many people were around. I looked away from him. I told myself I was being paranoid, tired, my mind playing tricks. Then a car alarm went off somewhere far away, thin and distant, and a dog started barking, the sharp, panicky kind of bark that dogs do when something's wrong that we can't hear yet. The guard, I noticed, had shifted. Not much, just his eyes. They'd moved. That tiny flick of the eyes away from his faraway focus point toward the road, and that more than anything else made my stomach drop. Because these men don't move. They train for years to not move. If his eyes had moved, it meant something had reached even him. Something had gotten through the wall. "What is it?" Bethany finally said, catching my expression. "You've gone all weird." "I don't know," I said. "Probably nothing." It was not nothing. I want to slow down here, because this next part happened in maybe 8 seconds, and in my memory it takes an hour. There was a sound like a door slamming. That's honestly the only way I can describe the very first instant of it. A huge, flat, hard slam, but wrong, too deep, too physical. A sound you feel in your chest before your ears even catch up. It came from over near the road on the far side of the park, past the trees, past the ice cream van. And then the ground moved. Not a lot, not like an earthquake, not where I was, but enough. Enough that the coffee jumped out of Bethany's cup. Enough that a pigeon exploded off the grass in a gray blur. Enough that I felt it come up through the soles of my shoes. And then, a beat later, the screaming started. I've heard people scream before, at football matches, at concerts, at parties. This was not that. This was a different sound entirely. It's a sound that comes from somewhere older and deeper in a person, a raw, animal wall of noise. Hundreds of people all making the same terrible sound at once. A cloud of smoke, gray-brown and ugly, was rising over the trees on the far side. It climbed fast, and beneath it I could see people already running. A stampede forming out of nothing, a whole crowd turning as one and pouring away from the smoke and toward us. "Move," I heard myself say. My voice didn't sound like mine. "Bethany, move this way." I grabbed her wrist. She was frozen, just staring at the smoke with her mouth open, her ruined coffee still in her other hand. I had to yank her hard to break the spell. Everything after that is a blur of bodies, people shoving, someone's elbow catching me in the ribs, a pushchair overturned on the grass with, thank God, no baby in it, the mother scooping her child into her arms and running. A man tripped and went down, and for a horrible second nobody stopped. They just ran around him, and then a stranger, a big bloke in a football shirt, hauled him up by the collar and dragged him along. That's the thing people don't tell you about panic. It brings out the very worst in some people and the very best in others, all at the same time, all in the same 20 square feet. I lost my water bottle somewhere in there. Stupid thing to remember, but I do. It just went, knocked out of my hand, and I never saw it again. And I remember a single shoe lying in the middle of the path, a woman's shoe, a nice one, just sitting there on its own while the crowd poured past it, and thinking, in some detached corner of my mind, that somebody was running through all of this with only one shoe on, and would probably never even notice till later. It's mad, the things your brain does. Half of you is screaming and running for your life, and the other half is quietly noticing a lost shoe. Bethany had gone completely silent by then, which frightened me more than the screaming. She's a talker, my sister, always has been, and she'd gone dead quiet, just breathing hard and letting me pull her, her hand cold in mine, her eyes too wide. Shock does that, takes the words right out of you. Now here's where it comes back to the guard. Because in all that chaos, in the middle of that river of running, screaming people, I turned my head, I don't know why, some instinct, and I looked back toward the ceremonial post. And he was still there. The guard standing exactly where he'd been. Red tunic, tall hat, rifle at his shoulder. Everyone around him running, shoving, falling, and he had not moved 1 inch. I stopped just for a second. Bethany crashed into my back. "What are you doing?" she shrieked. "Come on." But I couldn't stop looking at him, because it didn't make sense. Every cell in that man's body had to be screaming at him to run. He was a human being. He had a family somewhere, a mum, maybe kids, maybe someone waiting for him to come home. He'd heard the blast. He'd felt the ground move, same as me. He knew he had to know that there might be a second one. There often is. That's how these things work, and a soldier would know that better than anyone. And he stood there anyway. Not frozen with fear. That's what I want you to understand. There's a stillness that's fear, and there's a stillness that's choice, and even from that distance I could tell the difference. His stillness was a decision. His post was his post. He had been given a place to stand and a thing to guard, and the world could end around him, and he was not going to leave it. I have thought about that man's face for years. Set jaw, eyes forward again, back on that faraway point. As if by sheer force of will he could hold the whole panicking world together just by refusing to break. There's a word for it that I only found later reading about soldiers. Composure. But that word's too small for what I saw. Composure is staying calm when your train's delayed. This was something else. This was a man standing in the path of the worst thing that had ever happened to him and choosing, over and over, second after second, not to move. Because that was his job. Because someone, somewhere, a long time ago, had told him this was his post, and he had decided that his word on that meant more than his own fear, more than his own skin. I didn't have language for any of that in the moment, of course. In the moment I just felt this enormous, confused wave of something, awe and terror and a strange sort of shame at my own running feet, all tangled together. But it stopped me. Just for that second, it stopped me dead in the middle of the chaos, staring at a stranger in a red coat. The man in the yellow raincoat was gone. I looked for him in that moment. Some part of my brain still snagged on him, and he had vanished into the crowd. I didn't think about it again for a while, but I would. Bethany was crying now, big gulping sobs, but she was running, which was the main thing. We got clear of the worst of the crush and made it to a side path near a line of trees, up against some black iron railings. Dozens of other people had washed up there too, all of us panting, wild-eyed, checking each other over. A woman near me was on her knees being sick. A young dad was patting his pockets over and over, checking for a phone that wasn't there, muttering, "Where is it? Where is it?" His little boy clinging to his leg and silent with shock. An older man had his hand pressed to his chest, and I honestly thought he was having a heart attack until his wife arrived and he grabbed her and just held on. And over it all, that noise. Sirens now, starting up in the distance, that rising falling wail multiplying, more and more of them coming from every direction. And under the sirens the crying, so much crying. And somewhere, a phone ringing and ringing and ringing with no one to answer it. I got Bethany's back against the railings and held her by both shoulders and made her look at me. "You're okay," I told her. "Look at me. You're okay. We're okay." I don't know if I believed it, but you say it anyway. You say it because someone has to. That's when I heard it. Cutting through everything, the sirens, the sobbing, the general roar, a voice. High and thin and absolutely terrified. A child's voice. And it was screaming one word, over and over. "Charlotte, Charlotte, Charlotte." I turned toward it. A little way down the path, maybe 30 feet, there was a small girl. 6, maybe 7 years old. Blonde hair in 2 messy plaits, one of them half undone. A yellow summer dress with a grass stain on the knee. And she was standing completely alone in the middle of the path, turning in circles, screaming that name at the top of her tiny lungs, her whole face wet and red and broken open with terror. There were adults all around her, but everyone was so wrapped up in their own fear, in finding their own people, that this little girl was just alone. In the middle of all of it. Alone. Charlotte. And here's the thing that made my blood run cold. She wasn't looking around at the crowd. She wasn't screaming at the running people. She was screaming back the way we'd come, back toward the smoke, back toward the park. She kept trying to run that way, toward the danger. And a stranger, some man, kept catching her and turning her back, and she kept twisting out of his grip and trying again, screaming that name, "Charlotte, Charlotte," her little arms reaching out toward the smoke. Whoever Charlotte was, a sister, a friend, a mother, I didn't know yet, that little girl was trying to go back into the worst place in London to find her. I let go of Bethany. "Stay here," I said. "Do not move, I mean it." And I started pushing my way toward the child. I didn't get to her first, because someone else had already seen her, and that someone else was moving faster than I've ever seen a person move in a full ceremonial uniform. It was the guard. He'd left his post. He'd left his post. I don't think I can properly explain to you what that meant, if you don't already know. That man had stood like a rock through a bomb going off. He had not moved for the blast, for the smoke, for the stampede, for any of it. He had made himself into a wall and held. And the one thing that finally made him break that wall and run was the sound of a lost child screaming a name into the smoke. He was already halfway to her, that great bearskin hat gone now. He must have dropped it or torn it off. I never saw his boots pounding the path, red tunic flashing between the panicking bodies, one arm out ahead of him like he was reaching for her across the whole distance. And I remember thinking, in that strange, clear way your mind works in a crisis, he's not a statue. He was never a statue. He was a man the whole time, holding it in with everything he had, and this is what finally let it out. He reached the little girl about 2 seconds before I did. He went down on one knee right in front of her, so fast and so hard I heard it hit the ground, bringing himself down to her height, putting his body between her and the smoke. And I heard him speak. First words I'd heard from him, his voice was steady, somehow impossibly steady. "Hey, hey, look at me. I've got you, you're safe now, I've got you." The little girl stopped screaming. Just stopped. She looked at this enormous man in the red coat kneeling in front of her, and something in her small, terrified brain must have decided he was safe, because she threw both arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder and just shook. He held her, one big hand cradling the back of her head, and over the top of her his eyes came up and scanned the crowd, sharp and fast and hard, looking for the danger, looking for whoever she belonged to, looking for the next threat. Still a soldier, even holding a crying child, still a soldier every second. Then he said something to her low that I couldn't hear, and she lifted her wet face and pointed, back toward the park, back toward the smoke. And her tiny cracked voice said the thing that would change everything about that afternoon. "Charlotte's still up there in the attic. She can't get out, please, please." The attic. Of all the words I expected that child to say, that was not one of them. Not my mum, not my sister. An attic, up where, up in what? The guard's whole body went still, that same stillness I'd seen before, but this time it lasted only a fraction of a second before it snapped into motion. He turned his head and followed the line of her pointing finger, and so did I, and that's when I saw it, and my heart dropped all over again. Set back from the park behind the trees, past the running crowds, there was a building, an old one, tall and narrow, red brick gone dark with age, the kind of grand old townhouse that's been standing since long before any of us were born. Some sort of heritage building, I'd learn later, part museum, part offices, the kind of place tourists wander through and never really look at. And right up at the top of it, tucked under the sloping roof, was a small attic window. And in that window, small and pale and pressed right up against the glass, was a face. I'll tell you about that face and what the guard did next in part 2. Because what happened over the following few minutes is the reason I'm telling you this story at all. It's the reason I still can't sleep some nights. And it's the most extraordinary thing I have ever seen a human being do. But I need a moment before I can tell it. Because I can still see that little face in the window. And I can still hear that word. Please, I told you I needed a moment before I could get to this part. That's not for effect. It's the truth. Even now, sitting here telling you, my hands aren't quite steady. So let me pick it back up exactly where I left it. The little girl, the pointing finger, the old red brick building behind the trees, and that pale little face pressed against the glass of the attic window at the very top. The guard saw the face the same instant I did. I watched it hit him. I was close enough now, maybe 10 feet, to see his expression change. Just for a moment the soldier's mask slipped, and underneath it was a man doing a very fast and very ugly piece of arithmetic. A bomb had just gone off. There could be another. There was smoke. There might be fire. And there was a child trapped at the top of a tall old building full of dry old wood. He had a choice to make, and he had about 1 second to make it. He looked down at the little girl in the yellow dress still clinging to him. He gently, firmly, unwrapped her arms from his neck, and he looked around the crowd, really looked, until his eyes landed on a woman near me. An older woman, gray-haired, calm in the way that some people just are in a crisis, standing very still while everyone around her flapped. "You," he said to her, not a question, "take her, don't let go of her hand. Whatever happens, do not let go of her hand. Do you understand me?" The woman nodded. She stepped forward and took the little girl's hand and pulled her in close, and the child let her, though she kept looking up at the guard with these huge wet eyes. "You're being so brave," he told the girl, crouching 1 more second. "The bravest. I'm going to go and get Charlotte, all right. I'm going to go and get her. You wait right here." "Promise," the little girl said. I will never forget the way he answered. He didn't hesitate. He looked her dead in the eye and he said, "I promise." You don't say that. You're not supposed to say that. Every bit of training, every scrap of sense tells you never to promise a thing you can't be sure of. But he said it anyway because she needed to hear it, and he was going to make it true or die trying. I understood that even then. Then he was up and running, toward the building, toward the smoke. And God help me, I ran after him. I don't fully know why I did it. I'm not a soldier. I'm not brave. I'd have told you an hour earlier that if a bomb ever went off near me, I'd be the first person running the other way, and I'd have meant it. But something about that man, the sight of one person moving toward the danger while 1,000 people moved away from it, did something to me. It's like his direction was contagious. I couldn't just stand and watch. I heard myself shout back at Bethany, "Stay with them, stay." And then my legs were carrying me after that flash of red, and I wasn't thinking anymore, I was just going. I've tried to explain this to people since, and I always fail. They ask, "But weren't you terrified?" And yes, of course, I was more terrified than I've ever been in my life, but fear isn't the thing that decides what you do. I learned that on that path. Fear is just a feeling sitting in your chest, screaming, and you can move anyway. You can be absolutely soaked in fear and still put one foot in front of the other in the wrong direction, toward the thing you're scared of, because some other, quieter thing inside you has decided it matters more. I never knew I had that quieter thing until I watched a stranger show me his. We came around the trees and the building rose up in front of us, bigger than it had looked from the path. 4 stories, maybe 5 with the attic. Grand stone steps up to a big black door. And now I could see there was smoke, not from the building itself, but drifting across it, thick and low, from wherever the blast had been, on the road just beyond. The air was hazy and it stung the back of my throat and made my eyes water. There was grit and paper and bits of debris scattered across the steps. The big black door was shut. The guard hit it at a full run and it didn't give. Locked, or jammed, or barred. He stepped back and threw his shoulder into it once, twice, and it held. "Round the side," I shouted. I don't know how I even knew. I just saw a service gate, a narrow passage down the left of the building, half open. There. He didn't waste breath answering. He just went. Through the gate, down the passage, me right behind him, both of us into a small cobbled yard at the back where bins were knocked over, and a fire escape zigzagged up the rear of the building. And there a back door, half glass, and this one was already open, swinging loose on its hinges, probably blown open by the blast. The guard went through it without slowing down, into the dark. I stopped on the threshold, just for a second, because going through that door meant going into the building, and every sensible thing in me was screaming not to. The smoke, the maybe second bomb, the old dry wood, everything. And then I thought of that pale little face in the window, and that word, please. I went in. Inside it was dim and full of drifting smoke and the strong, bitter smell of burning that I couldn't place. Not a house fire smell, something harsher, chemical. Later they'd tell me it was from the blast, blown in through broken windows on the roadside. The building itself wasn't on fire. Not yet. But you couldn't have told me that then. Then it just felt like the whole world was made of smoke. We were in some kind of back corridor. Old floorboards, framed pictures on the walls, several of them knocked crooked or fallen. A grand staircase rose up ahead of us into the gloom. The building had that smell old buildings have underneath everything, even underneath the smoke, beeswax polish, old paper, dust, 100 years of quiet. There were little brass plaques on some of the doors we passed, and a rope across one doorway with a sign hanging off it, the kind that says no entry in a museum. A grandfather clock stood against one wall, and it had stopped. The blast must have jolted it, its pendulum hanging dead still. I remember all these little frozen details flashing past as we ran. This whole careful, dignified old place with its polished floors, thrown suddenly into chaos, pictures crooked. A vase smashed on the tiles, and the two of us pounding through it, kicking up dust. "Charlotte," the guard shouted up the stairwell. His voice boomed off the walls. "Charlotte, can you hear me?" We both went still and listened. Nothing. Sirens outside, far away now, muffled. The tick and creak of an old building settling after being shaken. And then thin, so thin from very high up. A knocking. Small, frantic, bang, bang, bang. And a voice so faint I might have imagined it, so young, so scared. "Help, help me, I'm up here." The guard was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time, one hand on the banister, and I was scrambling after him. And I remember the stairs groaning under us like they might not hold, and I remember not caring. First floor, second, third. The smoke got thinner as we climbed. It was pooling lower, thank God, but it got hotter, and the building got narrower, the grand staircase giving way to a plain, cramped servant's stair near the top, the walls close on either side. "Keep KNOCKING," the guard bellowed upward. "Keep making noise, we're coming, keep knocking." And she did. That's how we followed her, up the last twist of the stairs, that little desperate bang, 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 getting louder, guiding us in like a lighthouse. At the very top there was a low door, old, painted shut 100 years ago and painted over again since. And it was, I saw it straight away, blocked. A heavy old bookcase or cabinet had toppled against it, shaken loose by the blast, wedged across the doorway. And behind the door, that voice, right there now, right on the other side of the wood. "I can't, it won't open, please, I can't get out." "Charlotte," the guard said. He put both hands flat on the door. "Charlotte, my name doesn't matter, I'm here to get you out. I need you to listen to me. Are you hurt?" "No, I don't think so, I can't." And then the words dissolved into crying. "That's okay, you're okay. I need you to do one thing for me, step back from the door, as far back as you can you do that?" "Yes." "Good girl, go on, right back." Then he set to work on that door. And this is the part I want you to really picture, because I've never seen anything like it. First, the cabinet. It was heavy, some great old darkwood thing jammed at an angle. The guard got his hands under the edge of it and heaved. His whole face went dark red, the cords standing out in his neck, this low growl coming out of him. I got in beside him and grabbed what I could and pulled, and between us, with a horrible grinding shriek of wood on wood, we dragged the thing back far enough to clear the doorway. But the door itself still wouldn't open, painted shut, warped, and now something behind it, some fallen debris on her side, was jamming it too. He tried the handle, threw his shoulder against it. It shuddered but held. "Stand back," he told me, and then he did the thing I'll remember till the day I die. He turned side on to the door, braced his back foot, and he started to kick. Not wild, panicked kicks, measured ones, hard, flat, driving kicks with the heel of his boot right beside the handle where the lock was, each one landing in exactly the same spot. Bang, 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 the whole door frame shaking, dust raining down from the top of it. His jaw locked, his breath hissing out through his teeth with every strike, sweat running down his face in the smoke and the heat. "Charlotte," he shouted between kicks, "stay back from the door, I'm coming in." Bang, bang. I could hear the wood starting to give. A crack, a splinter, the frame beginning to split around the lock. Bang. And on that one, the wood around the lock tore loose with a sound like a branch snapping, and the door burst inward, swinging wide, and a cloud of dust rolled out of the little room beyond. He was through it before the dust had even settled. I have to stop and tell you what those last few kicks were like to stand next to, because I was right there, close enough to feel the shudder of each one come up through the floorboards into my own feet. There was nothing frantic about it, that's what I keep coming back to. A frightened person kicking a door does it wild, all panic, all over the place, wasting their strength. He did it like a machine, same spot, same force, same short, hard breath out through his teeth. Kick, reset, even while he was shouting to the child inside to stay back, even with the smoke thickening around us, even with the sweat pouring off him, that discipline never left him. He was frightened, I'm sure of it. He'd have been mad not to be, but the fear didn't get to steer. The training steered, and the training just methodically took that door apart, kick by kick, until it gave. I'll tell you what I saw when I looked in past him. A tiny attic room, slanted ceiling so low the guard had to stoop. One small window, the one I'd seen from below, a little square of gray London sky. Old boxes and covered furniture and dust sheets everywhere, a storage room forgotten. And crouched in the far corner, wedged between two crates with her knees pulled up to her chest, was a girl. Older than the little one in the yellow dress. 10, maybe 11. Dark hair stuck to her wet face, a grazed elbow bleeding a little, and an expression of such pure, exhausted relief when she saw that red uniform come through the broken door that it just about broke my heart in half. "Charlotte," the guard said, going to his knees again and holding out both arms. "Come here, come on, I've got you." She didn't move at first. I think she'd been so scared for so long that her body had sort of locked up, so he didn't grab her. He just knelt there, arms open, and said, softer than I'd have thought that big shouting voice could go, "Your sister sent me, the little one, yellow dress, plates. She's downstairs and she's safe and she's waiting for you. She was so brave. She found me and she sent me all the way up here for you. So let's not keep her waiting, eh?" "Your sister sent me. That did it." The girl's face crumpled and she scrambled out of the corner and into his arms, and he wrapped her up completely, one hand on her head, and just for a second, 1 second, I saw him close his eyes. Then they were open again and he was all business. "Can you walk? Any pain in your legs, your ankles?" "No," she managed. "No, I can walk." "Good. Then here's the plan. You're going to hold onto my hand and you are not going to let go for anything, and we're going to go down these stairs together. And there's a bit of smoke, but it's lower down, so we're going to stay bent over, keep our heads down like this," he showed her. "And we're going to breathe through our sleeves. Can you do that?" She nodded, wiping her face. "What's my name?" he asked her, and I realized what he was doing. He was checking her, keeping her mind working, keeping the panic off her. "You don't know it, do you? Nobody ever knows our names. Tell you what, you can just call me Sam." "All right, come on, Charlotte. Let's go and find your sister." Going down was worse than coming up. The smoke had thickened while we were at the top, curling up the stairwell now, and it was hot, and every one of us was coughing. The guard, Sam, I'll call him Sam, though I never did find out if that was his real name or one he made up on the spot for a scared kid, went first, bent low, Charlotte's hand crushed in his, me right behind with a hand on the girl's shoulder so she'd know she was boxed and safe on both sides. Halfway down, the girl's legs gave out. Just went. All that terror finally catching up with her body. And without breaking stride, Sam simply scooped her up into his arms, her face turned into his shoulder, and kept going, taking the stairs steady and sure even with her weight, even in that smoke, never once losing his footing. I want to say something here about what that looked like. You know the picture in your head of a royal guard, perfect, still, untouchable, a symbol more than a person, red and gold and rigid, standing outside a palace for tourists to photograph. Well, what I was following down those stairs was that same uniform, but filthy now, gray with dust and dark with sweat, torn at one shoulder. No hat, face streaked with soot, carrying a crying 11-year-old down a smoke-filled staircase in a bombed-out building, murmuring to her the whole way, nearly there, you're doing so well, nearly there. And I thought that is what the uniform is actually for, not the photographs. This is what's underneath it the whole time, every day, standing out there in the heat and the rain while people wave their hands in your face. This. We came out the back door into the cobbled yard, and the air, even the smoky outside air, hit us like cold water, clean and sweet by comparison, and all three of us stood there coughing and gasping. There were people in the yard now. 2 paramedics who'd come round the side, a couple of police officers, someone in a high-vis vest. They rushed forward. And Sam, even then, even coughing his lungs out, didn't hand Charlotte over until he'd carried her all the way to the paramedics himself and set her down gently on the ground and crouched to look her in the eye one last time. "You did so well," he told her. "You hear me? You did everything right. Now these people are going to look after you, and I'm going to go and get your sister, and I'll bring her straight to you. Deal?" "Deal," Charlotte whispered. He stood up, swayed a little, I saw it, the exhaustion finally getting a grip on him now the job was nearly done, steadied himself against the wall. A paramedic reached for his arm. "Sir, you need to sit down, you've breathed in a lot of." "In a minute," Sam said. "I made a promise." And he walked, half staggered, back around the side of the building, back toward the path, toward where he'd left a little girl in a yellow dress with a gray-haired stranger, back to keep the promise he'd made her. I followed him, of course I followed him. I'd followed him this far. We came back round the front of the building and out toward the path, and the scene there had changed completely in the time we'd been inside. It was full of emergency crews now. Police everywhere, tape going up, ambulances, that terrible controlled urgency of people who are trained for exactly this. The panicking crowd had thinned, funneled away by police to somewhere safer. But right where he'd left her, against the black iron railings, the gray-haired woman was still standing, and still holding tight the hand of a little girl in a yellow dress. She'd kept her word, she hadn't let go. The little girl saw us coming, saw the red uniform, filthy now, coming toward her out of the smoke, and I watched her whole face change from that frozen, tear-streaked fear into something so hopeful and so scared to hope that it hurt to look at. Sam went down on one knee in front of her one more time, his last bit of strength, I think, and before he could even speak, she asked the only question that mattered to her in the entire world. "Did you get her? Did you get Charlotte?" And Sam smiled. First time I'd seen him smile, tired and cracked, and the most real thing I've ever seen on a human face. "I got her," he said. "She's safe. She's just round there with the ambulance people and she's asking for you. Come on. I promised I'd take you to her, didn't I?" The little girl made a sound I can't describe. Half sob, half laugh. And she let go of the gray-haired woman's hand. The woman was crying now too, openly. And she grabbed Sam's big soot-black hand instead, and the two of them walked off together toward the ambulance. The enormous, exhausted soldier and the tiny girl in the yellow dress, hand in hand. I stood there and I watched them go, and I realized my own face was soaking wet, and I hadn't even noticed I'd started crying. The gray-haired woman put a hand on my arm. I didn't even know her, never got her name, but in that moment we'd been through the same thing and that was enough. "You went in there with him, didn't you?" she said, not really a question. "I saw you go after him, round the side." I nodded, I couldn't speak. She squeezed my arm hard and said, "Good lad," the way my own gran might have, and somehow that nearly finished me off completely. I had to look away and breathe for a second. Funny, isn't it? You can hold it together through the bomb and the smoke and the door and the stairs, and then a stranger calls you, "Good lad," and you nearly go to pieces. But I told you, right at the start, about a man in a yellow raincoat, the one standing off to the side, the one who was counting the crowd, the one who vanished the second the bomb went off. I hadn't forgotten him, and it turns out he wasn't finished. And the part of this story that made the newspapers, the part you might even have heard about, hadn't happened yet. That's part 3, and it's the part where I understood, finally, exactly what kind of man had been standing on that post the whole time. I need you to remember the man in the yellow raincoat. Because in all the noise and terror of that afternoon, he'd slipped to the back of my mind. There was too much else. The bomb, the stampede, the little girl, the attic, Charlotte, Sam. You don't have room in your head for a stranger in a raincoat when a child is trapped at the top of a burning building. But my body hadn't forgotten him. Some quiet, watchful part of me had filed him away, and it was about to start shouting. Here's where we were. Sam had just walked off, hand in hand with the little girl in the yellow dress, taking her to her sister at the ambulance. I was standing near the railings, wiping my face, coming down off the worst adrenaline I'd ever felt in my life, starting to shake the way you do when it's over. The gray-haired woman was next to me, both of us just sort of leaning on each other, strangers held up by the same relief. The path was full of police and paramedics now, radios crackling, someone shouting coordinates, a cordon of tape going up around the whole area, herding survivors toward a gathering point further from the road, where the smoke was starting to clear. And that's where I saw him again. The yellow raincoat. He was near the gathering point, moving through the survivors, the shocked, the crying, the wandering, the people looking for their families. And there was something wrong with the way he moved. Everyone else in that space was either frozen or frantic. He was neither. He was purposeful, weaving, working his way steadily toward the middle of the biggest cluster of people, where the police had gathered the most survivors together in one place to check them over. And he had a hand inside his coat. I want to be careful here because I've told this part so many times that I worry I've made myself sound cleverer than I was. The truth is I didn't know anything. I just felt, all over again, that cold, crawling wrongness I'd felt right before the bomb. The same feeling. Exactly the same. My body recognized it before my brain caught up. He had a hand inside his coat, and he was walking toward the biggest group of people, and he was calm. And I remembered the thing you dread, the thing everyone who's ever read about these attacks knows, that sometimes there's a second one. And sometimes the second one is timed for exactly this. For after. For when the crowd has gathered again, when the survivors are bunched together, when the emergency crews are all in one place. That's when the second device does the most harm. I remembered reading about it once in some long article I'd skimmed and forgot. How the cruelty of it is deliberate. The first blast isn't even the main event. The first blast is bait. It's there to create exactly the scene that was now unfolding in front of me. The survivors herded together, the paramedics rushing in, the police forming a knot, everyone drawn to one spot by the instinct to help and to gather and to count heads. And then into that, the second one. That's the design. That's the whole evil arithmetic of it. And here was a man in a yellow raincoat, calm as anything, walking straight into the middle of it with his hand inside his coat. I opened my mouth to shout. I don't even know what I was going to shout, and it turned out I didn't need to. Because Sam had seen him too. Sam was maybe 40 feet away, still holding the little girl's hand, still walking her toward the ambulance. And I watched his head turn. I watched him clock the yellow raincoat the same way I had. I watched him go still, that split second of stillness I'd learned to read now, the stillness of a man doing fast, terrible arithmetic. And then I watched him do the second incredible thing I saw him do that day. He stopped. He crouched down to the little girl, quick, urgent but gentle even now, and he pointed at a policewoman standing nearby, and I saw his mouth move, and the little girl ran to her, and the policewoman caught her and pulled her close. Sam got the child to safety first. Even now, even with a threat closing on a crowd, his very first move was to make sure the little one wasn't near him, wasn't near what he was about to run toward. And then he ran toward it. Toward the man in the yellow raincoat. I want to tell you he shouted a warning first, and maybe he did, maybe there were words I didn't catch. But mostly what I remember is the speed of it. This exhausted man who had just carried a child down a smoke-filled staircase, who could barely stand up 2 minutes ago, found something left in the tank and moved. Straight at the threat. Fast, low, absolutely committed, the same way he'd gone at that attic door. The man in the raincoat saw him coming at the last second. His head snapped up, and his hand started to come out of his coat. Sam hit him before it cleared.